Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Open Door Webinar Show. Great to have you here once more this evening. But what else would you do on these dark, cold winter evenings? Anyway, look, my name's Richie Clapson. You probably know that. It says that at the bottom of the screen. And if you don't, I've just told you anyway. And I'm here with the other half of propertyCEO, Mr. Ian Child.
Good evening, everybody. Hope you're very well.
What a wonderful little wave. Guys, it's great to have you here. And just in case this is your first time, let me let you know what you've let yourself in for. Our aim, as always, is to give you non-stop positivity for around 45 minutes. Yep, positivity. We're a half full zone. So lots of negative stuff going on, but we're not going to worry about that in here. We're just going to have 45 minutes of positivity for a while, all set around the theme of property and, of course, business. Ian, isn't that right?
It certainly is. So basically, Richie and I run a company called propertyCEO. Our job is to train people how to become successful property developers, and specifically small scale property developers. So some amazing opportunities out there right now, particularly for people that are looking to get into development. So we want to help people find out the best way of going about it, learn more about those opportunities, and to see if development might be a good fit. That's
right. And of course, you know, we've got the pandemic still going on, but the vaccine's coming in, which is good. And of course, probably recession. Anyway, who knows? Lots of redundancies. But the thing is, times like this always create opportunities, and particularly in property development. Now, I've been in this development game for about nearly 40 years, and I can tell you I know you're shaking your head, it's unbelievable, isn't it? I really don't look that old. I really don't look that old. But I can tell you this is the time, that was difficult to say, wasn't it? This is the time when people actually really make a success of things in development. You can buy things much cheaper, develop them out, and of course, make money out the back end. So really interesting times, but of course, only for those people that go and grab those opportunities. As always, we'll be doing a bit of news, a bit of advice, a bit of predictions, but above all, we're going to have a bit of fun. We're willing to take questions, you know, this is what it is. It's a question show. So if you've got some questions, put them in the chat box. I'm pointing here because this is where my screen is, and we will answer them. Of course, if there's no questions, we tend not to have much of a show. It's just be Ian and I rabbiting on for a little bit, which isn't going to be very good at all. So let's see who we have on this evening. We've got quite a lot of you on this evening, actually. So Lucas is on, Debbie, James, Charlotte, Ravinder's on. Good evening, Ravinder, Dylan, Kate, Dan. Hello, Dan. Welcome to you this evening. Andrew, Windy. We've got someone registered as Windy Miller this evening, and if I click on their name, it actually says Bob. Bob's one of our students who, Bob, one day you're going to try and get away with it, but you're not. Windy Miller, Camberwick Green is obviously who Bob is this evening because he messes around with barns. He's one of our students looking at barn conversions. Who else is on? Let's have a look. Where was I? Lynette's on. Good evening, Lynette. How are you? Welcome. Andrew's on. I know if I said Andrew. Michael, Yvonne, Deirdre, David, Roy's on. Good evening, Roy. Roy's one of our newer students. I mean, he's not much of a student. He's an old fella, really, isn't he? But, you know, he's going to do well. We've got every hope for him, haven't we? You know. Yeah. Evening, Paul. Paul's on as well. And Liam's on. And Adia's on. So, and more of you signing up. Teresa's just joined us. Good evening, Teresa. Welcome to you. And so, yeah, here we are. This is the show. Now, what we're going to do, give us a wave, first of all. Make sure you can see and hear us, please. Give us a wave.
Here we go. Lots of waves.
Lots of waves. Lots of waves. Raj says, good evening, A-team. Hello, all, says Ravinder. Hello, all to you. Evening, gent, says Andrew. And Michael says, good evening, all. You're welcome to put good evening, hello, how are you? Whatever you want in the chat box. Hi, says Dylan. Anything like that. If we can, we'll read them out. You can put rude comments in there as well about Ian, and I'll read those out. But hi, says Cole. So look at that. They're all putting hi. Hi's not much, so you could put a little bit more descriptive than that in. You could say, hello, A-team, something like that, which is a lot of people call us. Like that. Or, you know, you guys are the CEOs, we're the A-team. That's how it works here. Anyway, what we thought we'd do this evening, we thought we'd kick off with a bit of news. Good evening, Joe. Good evening, Roma. You've just joined us, so welcome to you. We thought we'd kick off with a bit of a news section now on some of these shows because it's really useful to get what's going on in the property world. So we pick up a few news items. We've got half a dozen we really just picked out the news over the last week. So we thought we'd just give you a quick update on those. And then by all means, please throw some questions in and we will answer them about the news, about anything you want. Hello, young men, says Andrew. Hello, Andrew. Good evening to you. Ian, right, shall we start? Have you got a news item? Let's do it. Let's do 2 or 3 each.
I could have a news item. It's a bit like the two Ronnies, really. Let's start the two Ronnies show. You can do the funny one. So the first one I spotted was in Property Week. So basically, Savills have done a report which showed that 1 in 8 retail units is currently vacant. They're projecting that if left unchecked, will go to about a quarter of retail units being empty by the end of the decade. And they've also worked out that of the units that are empty at the moment, 40% of them have been empty for 3 years or more. So, that is only going one way. There's been a lot of people talking in the media about the repurposing of retail, and that looks set to continue. Savills recommending that we need to be using some more imaginative solutions to come up with some mixed use ideas for our high streets and our town centres. And of course, we've got the government that's kind of effectively backing that by hopefully introducing these new permitted development rights that allows us to change retail and other buildings that are in the new Class E into residential, hopefully later this year, 1st of August, we think, but we should find that out within the next couple of weeks. So quite an interesting one there, and of course a great opportunity for developers looking to do conversions.
Yeah, I think that's really good. I mean, I picked another one. I'll use this one though, actually, if I can just jump in on this one, because this was about retail. This was in Property Week, actually, just downloaded the extract. And it was about White Stuff, the retailer White Stuff. So if you know people that work at White Stuff, don't take this and run away and say they're going to collapse. But they've got 115 stores, and they're actually saying they're actually gone into discussions now with all their landlords about their rent, because they're really down on turnover, as one would expect. A lot of these retailers are. There are a lot of sources saying that they're going to go into a company voluntary arrangement. That is where a company basically says, I can't pay my bills. That's what they're talking about. I can't pay my bills. Try and renegotiate with the, with the creditors they've got, and ultimately, if they can, try and survive. If the creditors don't accept it, then they have to go into a liquidation situation. And what Property Week has said about this is they've actually said, and this is interesting for you guys if you're thinking about getting into development or you're in development, as obviously some of our students are. They're saying that a lot of the White Stuff stock, the properties that they rent, are from independent landlords, okay? And they said the problem with independent landlords is that they really are relying quite often on the income from these properties for their pension, or indeed to live on. So for them to renegotiate with companies like White Stuff a lower rent, or a rent freeze or a rent-free period, is really a struggle. And also, I think is interesting about that is that that's fairly typical. You go along with Ian said 142 million square foot. I think he said was available. That's huge. And companies like this, if they go into liquidation, then inevitably be handing the keys back to some of these landlords. What are these landlords going to do? Well, a lot of these landlords, if they're desperate for the money, they're going to have to offload. So you're going to have very motivated sellers, which is what we've always been talking about. And so for those people out there thinking of picking up some retail conversions, great opportunity. So that's an interesting one there. Shall I just pick up another one?
Yeah, you've got one of you.
Very quickly, just this one was from Taylor Wimpey. We're just going to do half a dozen news items today. Taylor Wimpey said that they'd actually were down 39% on completions last year, which is not surprisingly, from 15,000 to 10,000. Although there's a lot of movement in the market, they really slowed down. A lot of the house builders will. But one thing they did say is they said, and this is the thing I picked up on, they said the market remains robust. So they feel the market's quite strong. They're just not selling as much stuff. So that was quite interesting for people like Taylor Wimpey to come out. Obviously, they're going to protect their share price, but to say it's quite robust is good. You got another one, Ian?
I've got one here from the good old Beeb. You might have seen it today, actually. They're talking about house hunters traveling hundreds of miles to view homes. So, of course, what's happening at the moment, the world of home buying, house buying is still open, which is, I think, a good indication that the government believes that the housing market is critical, that it stays operational. But it seems to have kind of placed a lot, I guess, estate agents in a difficult situation. Some people literally traveling 400 or 500 miles to go and view properties. And of course, you kind of understand that people want to view properties before they buy them. But of course, in the situation we're in at the moment, slightly tricky. And of course, what's prompting this in part, I guess, is the good old 31st of March deadline on the stamp duty holiday. So There's been some speculation, will that holiday be extended for another 6 months? In fact, I think a petition went into to Parliament, which means it's now going to be debated. Not quite sure what will happen there. Clearly could be a cost to it, a significant cost to it if it does, but that may allay some of these sort of emergency dashes to view properties. Yeah, quite interesting. Lots of stuff going on there, and quite an emotive subject as well, given lockdown.
Wow, wow. Another one I just picked up, and I like this. This is from Building Magazine. And this is again something we talk about a lot here, and I just think useful to share this so you guys are getting a feel for what other people are saying out there in this industry, because a lot of these sources you're not necessarily going to be familiar with. And Building Magazine was saying, and this is a report by the Construction Products Association in Building Magazine. Building Magazine is one of the key magazines in the industry, more for industry people than developers, more for a lot of professionals, industry professionals. But it said construction output is expected to rise by 14% this year as the COVID vaccine rollout breathes new life into the industry. I think it's all about confidence. This is something that we did a couple of shows ago. We talked about the forecast for this year, and I talked about the predictability of this year compared to last year. We have a vaccine. We know that vaccine will take time. There's certain challenges that the government has to get that through. Whatever your political persuasion is, don't go into that this evening. But clearly, for a lot of industry, they're saying, right, we've got a solution. We're working towards the light at the end of the tunnel, and that creates confidence. And that's what you guys need. You guys that are either in development or thinking getting into development, if you're thinking about it, it's these sort of confidence messages that you want to hear. Ian, if you've got one more tonight, we'd have done 6 then.
I've got one more. I've got one for all you industrial conversion fans. Remember the good old days when we could convert industrial buildings under permitted development rights? Well, there seems to be a change of foot, and in this case, it is from Planning Resource. They're talking about how the Mayor of London's London plan has basically changed. One of the things that was set out originally in that plan, and it's taken quite a while to get to the stage that it's at the moment, and I think it's going to be published, I suspect, in May. But one of the things they're looking to do when property is developed in London, that there should be a kind of a zero movement in the amount of industrial space that's left, so that this kind of the net balance is retained. And Robert Jenrick, the housing minister, said no, not having that. These industrial buildings are ripe for conversion effectively into residential. So the London city plan has been changed to reflect that, we gather. So great news if you're looking at industrial conversions once more. I think the great thing about industrial conversions is that they do sit below the radar. Lots of developers look at commercial conversions and can see the obvious opportunity with those, and it's very well publicized. But industrial buildings often look too difficult, too complicated. But once you know how to do it, you can certainly fly below the radar and get some great opportunities. So looks like Robert Jenrick's, he's on side with industrial buildings being converted, which is great.
So guys, look, just a little bit of news. If you like these little news items, let us know. It might be a theme that we carry on. This show is for you. It's not for us. We don't have to be here, but we're here because you're here. If you weren't here, we wouldn't be here. A complete waste of time. So just let us know in the chat box if you like a little update of news. We can do that each week. We can do it as a sort of a regular little thing. But I quite like to hear that. Say again.
I was just going to say, you've got that thing that newsreaders do with the papers. You've got a desk so you can do that, and I can't. Right. So,
guys, just summing up what we talked about, we've got a lot of news around retail. I mean, the amount of retail out there. Roy put in the chat box here, in the question box, he says 142 million square foot. That's a lot of flats. You're right, it is, Roy, isn't it? There's a lot of opportunity. That's what that is. So I think we're talking here about opportunity in retail and the language that's going on in the market supporting that. People talking about the market's not going to completely collapse, but there is a downturn, but there's a robustness there. These people traveling around still for houses, we know there's a demand. And of course, the vaccine, the positivity, and of course, these constant encouragements about the government on our side, your side. The government's on your side, trying to help you, small scale developers, get into this game by making sure that they're saying to the London Mayor, no, put this industrial stuff back in. We're going to make sure we convert that and provide houses. So some really interesting stuff there. So let us know in the chat box if you like that. Okay, let's just pick up. We've got some questions and comments. I'll make sure we cover all these. Colm says he's actually, he says he's from Fintona in Northern Ireland. Blimey, we've gone completely international now. Yvonne says, where is the chat? I'm not sure what that question means, Yvonne. Let us know. The chat's here. It's backwards and forwards. I'm not sure. Okay. Joe says, I'm not sure if this is a question or a statement. I'll read it out and we'll see at the end. Joe says, according to the managing director of Pure Gym, only 15% of 260 square meter gym sites have come to an agreement on rent concessions due to COVID. A cliff edge is taking place due to COVID and a lack of agreements. Yeah, good point, Joe. Very similar to what we're talking about here with White Stuff this evening. They've got to reach agreements, and if they don't reach agreements, they're in trouble. Joe's actually said evening. Good evening, Joe. Good evening to you. Let's see if we've got some questions in there. Okay. Are these new stories relevant for Scotland too? Deirdre, well, not in terms of permitted development, but I think some of these statements, I don't know whether the 142 million square foot covers Scotland. I think in terms of some of the positivity that we're talking about, yes. I mean, the London plan doesn't, only covers London. But it's the message. I think it's the message that the government are sending out. What the Scottish government do and the Welsh government, obviously is up to them. But quite often on some of these issues, they will follow suit. So I think it's a message, Deirdre, that you want to pick up that sort of says, yeah, you know, this is a good message that things are happening. Okay. Let me pick up some of the comments. Let's start with a question, and I can have a little scroll through. I'll do a question, Ian. You can, or do you want to pick one out? You pick a question out. You answer that, and I'm going to scroll up and down and see what else we've got as well.
Okay, we've got one here from Mike. So Mike basically said, where's it gone? Here it is. You mentioned new PD rights coming in later this year. How will they help with the high street regeneration? Okay, so buildings are in use classes, and back in I think September, the government changed the use class of a number of different types of building that were previously all in separate use classes, and one of those was retail, and they lumped them all together in a new Class E category, which includes offices, light industrial, retail, doctors' surgeries, a whole raft of different buildings that now fall into this single use Class E. And then in December, they said, great news, you'll be able to convert those. We're proposing that you'll be able to convert anything in Class E to residential under permitted development rights. So where we're at with that at the moment, that was kind of consultation. I believe the consultation ends in a week or so's time. I'm guessing then that there'll be some deliberations in Parliament, or at least at the Housing Parliament, and then we think 1st of August will be the enactment. We'll get the law changed, and that's when they'll come into effect. So basically then a lot of the buildings that are in the centre of our towns are going to fall into light industrial, commercial, retail, and then there will be this kind of consolidated permitted development opportunity to change them. It also goes across conservation areas. So being in a conservation area will not mean that the PD doesn't apply, it will still apply. So I think there's going to be, I'm sure, some discussion about it and some dialogue. We should find out pretty quickly, though, the way in which the government has decided to move things forward. So yeah, exciting times, but that's how it's going to affect the high street.
Well done, Mike. Well, I've got something here, and I think I can piece a couple together. I think, again, for you, because this is interesting. Guys, I love you shared lots of positive comments about the news. I'll pick those up a bit later. But Paul says, only watching tonight as needs some positivity. Well, Paul, you're in the right place. You know what we're like. Him and his entire family household have been diagnosed with COVID. Blimey, Paul. Hopefully you can't catch it through the webinar. Well, hopefully not. I mean, yeah. So Paul's obviously, he's come on for positivity. Paul, welcome. Hopefully we'll do that for you. But Raj just put a question in, and I think it sort of all ties together. He says, question for Ian. I don't know why he wouldn't ask me, but he says, what tips can you offer to mentally stay strong and motivated day after day, searching for opportunities and not finding the appropriate one? I guess there's tips about being mentally positive in times like this, but particularly searching for property. You got a take on that, Ian?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing about it is really making sure that you've got your goals nailed down, because what we're doing this for is actually is a long-term plan. What we're trying to do generally in property development is to create some wealth that enables us to do certain things. It might be to acquire certain things, nice houses or whatever that side of things, or it may be to get some time back, it may be to give back to the community at large. Whatever it is, that's our end goal. I think one of the things that the mindset shifts that you have to make in property development, it's one of those things where a lot of people think it must be easy at the outside because it's quite easy to see the mechanics of how it's done. The reality of actually making it happen is difficult in a number of different ways. First of all, because there's quite a lot of moving parts to it, but also because it isn't simply just have a quick flick through the paper or flick through Rightmove and we'll find one and we'll start it tomorrow. You can actually spend quite a lot of time, in fact, potentially looking through lots of different deals, hundreds of deals even, to try and find one that actually stacks up and that is going to be the one for you. The great news about that, of course, is that it really does deplete the competition, and that ultimately the mechanism works. That because the houses and homes and offices and everything else are developed very successfully by people over a great number of years, for a very long time. And you also know that property development is, in terms of the financial rewards for property development are significant, and so therefore should allow you to achieve those goals. It's kind of a persistence pays message. So with a lot of things that people can get into, whether that's things like stocks and shares, you have less control. Share prices can evaporate and you've no idea particularly why. Also other things, if you're an entrepreneur and you go out and you invent the, whatever it is, the motorcycle ashtray, you're not entirely sure whether it's going to be a riotous success. And so the failure could be, it's a bit of a trip to the bookies. Whereas in property development, you're sure that you're on the right path because many people have done it before and done it successfully. The difficult bit is, yes, it does take time and effort to be able to find a good deal. So it's going to be a question of keep the faith. The more you go through, every one that you knock down, you're one closer to getting the one that works. And the other beauty of it is that you don't need 100 of them. You do not need 100 deals in order to change your life. You actually only need one, the first one. And I promise you, if you keep going, you'll find it. It's quite interesting when we talk, I think Richie's mentioned this on previous episodes, we talked to some of our students who have taken a little while to find a deal, and their kind of mindset changes almost overnight. And they're the ones then encouraging other students to say, yeah, don't worry, you'll get there in the end. And when you do, it's all worthwhile. So yeah, try and keep the faith. It is difficult. I know there's a lot of work involved in finding the right deal, but when you do, I promise you, it will be all worthwhile.
Great stuff, Raj and Paul. Hopefully that's good. Maybe I'll have a go now. Let me have an answer of a question. So I've got a question in here. Sorry, there's loads of questions, guys. We're never going to get through all of these, but let's see what we can do here. Because I saw an interesting one. Ravinder says, good evening. He said, can we start, yes, the question is, can we start property development with low capital, 40 to 50K? Thank you. And as a further follow on says, especially in expensive areas such as Bucks. Well, yes, in theory you can, okay? So let's not get all dreamy and know that it's super exciting and we can do stuff without money, but you can do stuff without any money at all, okay? It is entirely possible to go into property development and borrow 100% of what you need. Now, what does that mean? How does that work? Well, if you're going to go down the sort of traditional funding route with commercial funders, that becomes quite difficult, quite challenging. I wouldn't say it's impossible, but generally those guys like you to have what they would call some skin in the game. They want some money in there of your own cash, okay? Some will do it. Some will do it with a mixture of private funding, because development is a mixture of private funding and commercial funding that you've got to put together, okay? Now, what you can do, though, there are companies out there who will bring 100% funding to the table, Ravinder. They bring 100%. And on the basis of that, they'll take a cut, maybe 40, 45% of the profits, okay? But you're going to manage it. So you can manage and deliver the project, but they would fund it 100%. So we actually had a student of ours who put together a deal, unfortunately didn't get it, but the deal that she put together, she was looking to borrow, now forgive me, but it was something like nearly 1.8 million, something like that, all 100% funded, giving away somewhere between 40 and 45% to another organization. So yes, you can do it. And then when you think about it, with your 40 to 50K, okay, you only need to put in a small proportion of the 30% deposit, providing you're going to go down what's called a permitted development route. So you need to understand, I guess you need to know what you don't know, Ravinder. You need to know what type of projects that you need to go for that funders will favour and support with nearly 70% of the purchase and 100% of development, and where they will let you put in the minimal skin in the game of your own money. But I can definitely tell you can open the door with 40 to 50K in your pocket, and actually probably half of that. Okay, so if you had 20 to 25K, that is enough to get into deals that will yield you six-figure profits. So hopefully that's answered that question and given you a bit of encouragement and positivity. Ian, what have we got?
We've got one here. Roy asks about commercial funding. It says commercial funding started to tighten in the car industry. Has this been seen in the property market where funders are less willing to lend for developments? I think the answer there, speaking to a broker fairly recently, they're saying there's still quite a very strong market. They're very busy at the moment, and there's quite a number of things going on. Most of the lending is, probably as you'd expect, it's new build and conversions. Conversions in particular are very strong at the moment. Typically, what happens with commercial lenders is that they will tweak the loan to value, the LTVs, if they've got some concerns, and if they kind of try and de-risk projects. But what they've done is there's been a lot of demand for extensions, loan extensions on commercial finance because of the COVID and so on. So projects have been dragging on, and typically what you want to do as a developer is to try and avoid a situation where your finance ends and you have to renegotiate a deal with the lender, because to some extent there is a certain element that they've got you over a barrel a little bit, and there are some fees associated with extending it and so on. So what I took a great deal of I was quite impressed with the commercial lenders, that they'd actually gone out their way to really try and create some quite imaginative products that would allow developers to continue with their development, to continue with the finance. And it could involve a number of different scenarios. Some is pure bridging, some would be selling some of the completed units and then completing the rest over time, so flexing the borrowing. But quite a lot of interesting and quite out of the box thinking from the lenders. So I have to say, he was talking up the commercial lending quite significantly. I think, it certainly seems to be a very busy market at the moment. What I would say though is, you can find certain lenders are going to be in a situation where perhaps they're going to be, rather than refusing to lend, at the end of the day, not going to get a great return on their capital for that, but just being slightly more cautious in certain instances, and that can involve some of the fee structures, but also and the interest rate, but also the amount of loan they're prepared to give relative to the value of the scheme. But yeah, not bad news.
There we go. Hopefully that kept Roy happy this evening. Ravinder says many thanks, many thanks, he said, for my answer, but I think this is one of the best compliments I've ever seen. Ian, you answered Raj's question earlier, and he said, thanks, Ian, you answered it beautifully.
Oh, thank you.
Well done. So what, you saying I don't answer questions beautifully? You lot are so hard on me. Why?
You just took it that way. Nobody said that.
Well, I'm reading what's here. That's all I'm looking at on the screen, and I've never been told that I've answered a question beautifully. But let me try now. I'm going to answer Michelle's question. Michelle, if I answered it beautifully, please let me know. Michelle's question: could you outline or describe the sequencing of events that we as property developers might go through, from finding a deal to securing a deal to financing the deal? I'm sure there are a few ways and also some actions that might need to be taken in sequence rather than one at a time. Is there a logical ideal order, please? Blimey, you want me to teach you how to do property development tonight on an open door webinar show? Wow. Okay, Michelle. So look, in terms of, so what are you trying to do? You are obviously looking for the deal. So where did she say the three things? Okay, finding a deal, securing a deal, financing a deal. Okay, well, you can't secure a deal until you found a deal, okay? But you ought to be thinking of the other things in parallel. So what you need to be looking for out there is once people are educated and they know what they're doing. So once you're on the journey, you're getting educated in terms of, let's assume you've got all that education. Okay, that's what we do. We teach people, but let's just assume you're fully educated. You've done all your training modules. You're now going, what do I put into practice? And I guess this is where the question comes into play. Well, you know, so it often is the question, which I think comes down to some people say, do I look for the money first or the deal? The money or the deal? What do I look for? Well, the thing is, you've got to look for both. Okay, you need to run things in parallel. There is a statement which often comes out, and it's quite true to an element. If you find the deal, the money will come. Find the deal, the money will come. But our suggestion is that you've got to do a number of these things in parallel. So you've got to build your brand, your credibility, you've got to understand your business and your structure. So you've got to get all those things in place, okay? Don't go out there trying to put yourself out to the marketplace, not understanding how this industry works, not being properly educated, not knowing how to set your business structure up properly, not knowing about credibility and brand, because you will fall flat on your face. If not, you don't fall flat on your face, you're going to make some big mistakes, cost you a lot of money. So you're going to do all of those things. But let's assume now you're in this, do I go and look for deals or do I go and look for money? So in parallel. So what I would suggest you do is you're going to be out there, you're going to be building those relationships with agents, you're going to be doing all those things that we teach people to do to go and look for deals. And at the same time, you're going to be out there networking, talking to people about money, commercial funders, private funders, bringing both of those things in parallel, because you're going to be talking to those funders on the basis that you are going to be doing deals. There's a way we teach you, as Michelle, I'm sure you're aware, a way we teach people to make sure that they can present themselves to private funders and commercial funders with credibility, so that those funders are willing to talk to them about lending money, even if you haven't got a deal yet. So basically in parallel. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an answer. I could probably spend several hours on this, but since it's only a 45-minute webinar show, I'm going to struggle. Now, I don't know whether Michelle says I've answered that beautifully or not. Ha 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 ha.
Yeah, she's just laughing. I think that's a good sign. I'm sure that's a good sign.
Parallel is good.
Are you going to go in?
Sorry.
It's the Richard Captain show all of a sudden, is it? Right, one from Gabriella, who asks, please can you explain a little more about the date change over for the having to comply with space standards? Is it submission before the April date or approval before this date? Okay, so Gabriella, yeah, just for the benefit of everybody else, you remember that space standards is a set of rules that basically determines, among other things, kind of the minimum size of the units that you build, the homes that you build. And historically, they never used to apply to permitted development rights. Some unscrupulous developers then built rabbit hutches with no windows and 16 square meters, really not really fit for human habitation. And the government then changed the rules and basically said that going forward from the 6th of April 2021, all new PD schemes would have to comply with space standards. So but the answer to the question, Gabriella, is that basically the rule applies with respect to the submissions made either on or after that date. So provided you make the submission on before the 6th of April, then that's the cutoff. Anything after that, submission after that has to comply with space standards. There you go.
Okay. I have to come back. Breaking news. Michelle said beautiful, in fact, the way I've answered that. Roy says, I agree you guys are the 18, but which one of you claims to be face? I was just quickly trying to look up who face was on the 18, but I haven't managed to do that in the last few seconds.
So just to be clear, sorry, you remembered that Windy Miller came from Camberwick Green, but you can't remember who face was. Did you know that? I don't know whose face, but when I look at you, I do see, do you remember is it B.A. Baracus?
Yeah.
And you've always reminded me. Yeah, because you're kind of like the mirror image, aren't you? You don't have a hair in common.
Right. Okay, Jonathan says, what kind of interest rate can we expect from a typical commercial lender? Jonathan, Okay, depends on the deal. There's a whole combination of things that come in: your credibility, the way you position yourself, your way you present yourself, the quality of the deal, the team, and everything that goes with it. So it will vary. Okay, it will vary. So if you're a brand new developer, you haven't got much of a team, you're not presenting yourself in the right way, you're probably going to be over 10% per annum. If you do a lot of things good, you're probably going to be getting down to 6-7%, with a fair win. But if you when your budget stuff, if you're looking at 8 or 9%, that's not a bad place to be. Hopefully, Jonathan, we've answered that one fairly quickly. Trying to get a few quick ones here this evening, just because of time. Shall I just do another quick one here? Is that okay with you, Ian?
It's fine by me.
Yvonne says, she says, I'm 22. Okay, there's no point making a big song and dance about your age just because I'm not 22, Yvonne, but I'll go with that. She said, I'm finishing my business degree next year and I'm hoping to go into property development. Well done. What is the first step I should take? Also, I have £45,000 savings so far. Is that enough for property development? I think what you should do, Michelle, is just go on holiday. As soon as lockdown comes, spend the whole money and go on holiday and thoroughly enjoy yourself. No, that's not good advice, Yvonne. Yes, £45,000 is enough. We just talked briefly about that just a minute ago. I think that was Ravinda that asked that. Yes, it is enough. You can do some deals. 45,000 will leverage your way in, Yvonne, to deals that will earn you six-figure sums. Where do you start? The first thing I'd say to anyone out there, and Yvonne especially, if you're thinking of this, getting into this completely brand new, do not just give property development a go. I heard someone the other day, well, I didn't hear him, I saw a Facebook post and someone talked about just Google stuff. You can Google pretty much anything you want, they said, which is horrendous. Property development is risky. Property development is hard work, okay? You can make life-changing amounts of money in property, but it can change your life either way, either very successfully or great failure. Thing is, you need to know what you don't know. It's a saying I use a lot. You need to know what you don't know. What I do, Yvonne, we do some free sessions for people to start thinking about property development. Listen out to the end of the show. I'll give you an email address you can send in if you want to come on one of our free half-day sessions. Not just Yvonne, anyone. We do a session just to try and give back out there. But it's really, it's a 3-hour session. It's about really what property development's about, so you can start opening your eyes. So Yvonne, that might not be a bad start. Okay, Ian, what have we got?
I got one here from Javinda, who says, I love the idea of reusing existing industrial buildings that you mentioned in the London plan. Makes sense to me, so environmentally friendly. But how can we change these types of buildings? Surely they are really complicated to turn, say, into houses. So yeah, industrial buildings into houses. Well, actually, in many respects, industrial buildings are relatively easy to convert, and part of the reason for that, many of them don't have much in the way of internal infrastructure, so they're just enclosed spaces. Whereas if you've got commercial or retail, you quite often got quite a lot of suspended ceilings, air conditioning, partition walls. There's sort of a whole lot of stuff going on that gets in the way. The other thing that industrial buildings have in the main is a very robust base on which they are built. Generally speaking, when we think in terms of like the foundations and the slab, the load capacity of an industrial building typically has to be much greater than that of a residential building. And so you've kind of got an opportunity to build straight off the slab without actually having to dig new foundations. Now that's subject to a few things, but in the main, you're likely to find that you don't have to go into the ground. And when you don't have to go into the ground, it removes a really big part of the risk, because one of the big unfortunate things that can happen when you go into the ground is that you can bump into some nasties, because we don't know what's down there. There could be all sorts hidden under the surface that you only then discover when you already own the property, you've already taken the plunge, and your contractor digs into the soil, and then you could find something that could be a challenge. If you're building straight off a base, then you don't have that challenge at all. So I would say that from that perspective alone, just from a physical perspective, there's some other factors as well that would make it easier, including that your team are going to be building indoors for most of the time, rather than in the trying to dig foundations in the lovely English winter, and even the rainy English summer, one of the two. I think the other thing that's really powerful about industrial conversions is actually the fact that most developers overlook them. I think I mentioned earlier, it's a strategy. Most people look at industrial buildings and can't imagine them being turned into homes. And so they tend to think, well, you'd have to knock it down. Knocking it down is much more expensive because you've got some demolition costs and you've got to start everything from scratch. If you're converting it, it's quicker, it's typically cheaper. And because people aren't looking at that, you've got far less competition. So you can afford to you've got a better opportunity basically to win deals. So there's a few thoughts on changing industrial into homes. Certainly not as tricky as perhaps a lot of people might have thought. So I hope that helps you, Linda.
Good stuff. Jonathan said, thank you for the answer we gave him earlier, which is good. And Jonathan also said, so Yvonne, this is for you. For anyone actually. He said, I joined the 3-hour session last night. That's our 3-hour free session, and would highly recommend it to everyone else on this webinar if they haven't joined before. There we go. What a recommendation. Jonathan, the check's in the post. Okay. Let me grab a couple of other these quick ones if I can, because we're running short of time, but let's see if we can pick a few. There's a question came in a little bit earlier that I want to pick up, and I've got to find it again. Just bear with me. Okay, Amir answered the question. He said, the question is it worth looking for opportunities in prime London? Is it too crowded with developers? What's your long-term view on the city? Okay, 3 questions there. Yes, it is worth looking for opportunities in London. Is there a lot of developers? Yes, there are per square foot than there are other places, but then there's a lot more opportunities. Okay, the London market is an odd market. When you talk about our view on the long-term view of the city or London and the Greater London market is quite fickle, goes up and down quite quickly, it changes. And what I would say that investors, funders, they change like the wind. Okay, 1 minute they're interested in within the M25, the next minute no way, everything outside of the M25 they're interested in that, but not within. So just be mindful of that. Okay, that basically the London market changes really quite quickly. There are definitely lots of opportunities. There are definitely some students doing some great things, some students of ours, indeed other developers doing some great things and finding opportunities. You've got to look hard for an opportunity anywhere. London as much as elsewhere. I think the great thing about London is the density you've got, that it just means there's a huge amount of property there, which will give you a lot of opportunities. And of course, London, you need to know the London market, because as I'm sure if you're in London, you'll know that you can be one street away from a doubling in value. So you want to make sure you get your properties in the right place. But in terms of stock, great opportunities for stock. Hopefully that answers that question. I wanted to pick that one up because that was earlier. Let's see what else we got. Have you got another quick one in to do?
Let me have a look. Here's one from Robert, again about industrial buildings. That's started a trend. Do we have PD rights for demolition of industrial buildings? If we do, why would we convert? Okay, so yeah, technically you can. There are some PD rights that exist to allow you to demolish buildings that are vacant and then effectively rebuild residential. Quite a few conditions attached to that, though. And what I think, one of the strategies that you can apply to that to perhaps avoid some of those conditions is to argue what planners call a fallback position, where you have the rights to be able to do that, but actually converting it is better, easier, and has a bit more beneficial impact, and therefore you argue with the planning department that therefore that is the better of the 2 options. And because you've got the right to do one, but this other opportunity is better, then that's the fallback position. I'll be honest, I would say that's fraught with difficulty and quite a lot of conditions. I would say with what we got on the table at the moment in terms of Class E, hopefully being allowed to be converted, which includes light industrial, into residential from the 1st of August, that's probably a better way to go. So I think that would be my advice there.
Great stuff. The last one I'm just going to pick up. Chris says, hi, brilliant show as usual. Thank you, Chris, for that. He says, is using an unencumbered property possible or a good substitute for a lack of liquid cash for a deposit for development / bridging finance? Potentially, Chris. I think it depends what the question is and what it relates to. If you've got a property that you want to develop that's unencumbered, perfect, okay, because you can leverage the development finance against that. If you've got an unencumbered property over there, but you want to start leveraging against that to buy this, you can use it. It's slightly more challenging, but that will probably improve your own net asset position, which will actually help in that balance of all these things that's going on when people decide to lend you money or not lend you money, and at what percentage, either in terms of borrowing or percentage in terms of the total amount. So yes, it can work. Okay, suggestion there, Chris, is speak to a finance broker. Speak to a good broker that will start to understand what you're trying to do, where that property sits, is it part of the deal or outside the deal, and then see whether they can structure a process for you. There we go. We're just over Q2. We like to wrap up by Q2. Let us just go back. There was a few comments on the news. It looks like you quite liked it. Michelle says, yes, I like the news updates. It saves us from scrolling through for relevant features and sets the backdrop. Well, we're pleased to save you a bit of time. We'll do the work. Don't worry about that. Paul says, starting with the papers needs a great papers need is a great start to the show. I think he likes it, basically. And Paul, hope you're all well in your household very, very soon. A couple of other people said, yes, it's good, thank you. Other people say, yes, like the news, yes, please, more of that. So there we go. Hopefully that's all good. Guys, please put in the chat box if you've enjoyed the show. We like to see those comments at the end. We do this show for you. You're all the CEOs. If anyone would like to come on that half-day session that we talked about, grab a pen and paper, and I'll give you the email address you can write to, and one of our team will contact you and get you registered for that when we've got some availability. So hopefully that will come up very soon, probably next month. Our next show is next Thursday, isn't it? Thursday, the 21st at 7 o'clock. And it looks like we're going to do some news items again, Ian.
Hey, look forward to that.
Well, it'll save me shell looking. That's the key thing. Exactly.
I'll try and get a desk by then, but I might involve having a smaller TV, so it's a bit of a trade-off.
Good stuff. So, guys, the email address, if you want it, is support@propertyceo.co.uk. So that's support@propertyceo.co.uk. The free half-day workshop is called the Six-Figure Roadmap. Just write in and says, Richie or Ian says, I can come on the free half-day workshop. Can you give me some details? The team will wonder what on earth's going on, but they'll try and sort something out. So there we go. So that is the end of the show. Thank you very much. Let's see. We got some lovely comments coming in at the end. Michelle says, thank you. Enjoyed the show. Says Jonathan. Yvonne says, nice to see your faces and listen in. Cara says that one. Nice. Well, we can't see your faces, can we? But I'm sure you're there. We can imagine what you look like. Lots of great content. Thanks, Jen, says Dan. The news items are very beneficial, says Andrew. These are popping in. Grazie, says Michael. I think that's Italian. Look at that Italian accent I put on there.
Wow.
Did you enjoy that?
Quite a big moment.
Really enjoyed the show, says Deirdre. And Lynette at the end says, thank you, guys. Enjoyed the show. Thank you, guys, Teresa. Thank you for you all attending. Without you, we wouldn't, well, it'd be pointless being here, wouldn't it? Good night. See you next week. Have fun. Bye-bye.